So, welcome to today's Breakthrough Life Coaching session. I'm Sarah Wilson, and every week we are talking to an amazing life coach and really just delving into how they do things, their story, and getting some little secret tips and hints about what we could bring to our coaching. And I know some people who are on this call might be coaches who have been working for a long time, and we may have people on the call who are just thinking about becoming a coach. So, whoever you are, and kind of whatever reason that you've turned up today, I hope that you're going to get lots and lots of lovely, interesting things from out of this call. And today, I am joined by the amazing Anna Veal, who I've been having a wonderful chat with, and we've got lots in common. So it's going to be a good day. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's so exciting. So I have this morning just been reading through a little bit of your book, which is called Only Human. And it's just really allowed me to kind of focus into what it would be like to work with men. And I think that that's like the main focus of your coaching practice at the moment. So can you just tell us a little bit about your story and why you got into that kind of focus in your practice?
Yeah, sure. So, hi everybody who's on live. Nice to see you all. So I came from a personal training sports massage background. So when I was 25, I worked in corporate, and I was on the corporate rat race, working myself up. I worked in human resources, and it was great, but it was long hours and very. When you're in human resources, it's quite interesting because people think it's people led, but back in the 2000s, it was you're working for the company essentially, and then the people happen to be part of the company. So I could see that at some point I was going to have to make a decision, business versus people, because obviously at some stage you're going to come across times where it might be your friends that you're having to discipline, or you are on the back end of redundancies and it's people that you've been sort of personally involved with. So I knew that there was a fork in the road when I was 25, and I broke up with my soon to be fiance, and had this kind of, not midlife crisis at 25, but I literally had this fork in the road where I thought I can either carry on down the HR road and do well but not be fulfilled, or do something that I really enjoyed doing, which was being with people and getting the best out of people. So I quit my job and retrained to become personal trainer, sports massage therapist. And at the time, I had no business acumen at all. It was, I'd always worked for an organization, and here I was having earned quite a lot of money in that role, to earning 25 quid a week, doing pre-season training for a rugby club. So it was completely turned on its head. But I really enjoyed the challenge, and I actually fell into working with professional sportsmen at that time. So I was working with professional rugby clubs, semi-professional football clubs. And 20 years ago, there weren't many female professional sports out there. So I ended up working predominantly with men. And what I noticed was that there was a real need for these people who, on the surface, looked like they had it all and they were strong and vibrant and could deal with the daily pressures of life, but they were actually dealing with a lot of stress, and they didn't really know how to deal with that stress. In England and in New Zealand, there's very much a she'll be right, and men take the stress on, and without getting too generalistic, they're the breadwinners, they're the ones that have got to take on the stress. And historically, they haven't known how to talk about their feelings or even know what the feelings are. So I guess I kind of fell into working more with men. And then I guess being in an environment where I could see that the stress was very heavy, but these guys seemed to open up quite openly with me. I think there's something quite special about the relationship with personal training, but also massage. With massage, their head is down. For those of you who've had a massage, generally speaking, your head will be down, and so there's no eye contact. And so what I found was a lot of men would, once they got to know you, they were able to really talk about how they felt about things, without having the kind of conflict of eye contact and that sort of thing. And so they would leave feeling much better about themselves. And so, yeah, I developed a reasonably awesome business over 16 years, and then had the children, and we moved over from England to New Zealand, and I continued on the PT and sports massage route then. And then about 7 years ago, I decided that it all happened in the mind, and I was getting a little bit older and I wanted to help people, and I'd had some coaching myself and really enjoyed that coaching experience, but again it was still quite new, especially over this side of the world. Coaching wasn't something that people really understood, so I retrained, got my qualification, and I knew straight away that the people that I wanted to help the most were men. And that was about 6 years ago, and it was like banging my head against a brick wall, to be quite honest. One, I didn't articulate my message too well. People thought I was a counsellor or a psychologist, and so there was this sort of mismatch between, well, I don't really know what you do, or they just wanted to come for a massage. So I had this sort of period of maybe a year and a half, 2 years of really going, okay, what can I do to sell this? And then once people got the idea of what it was all about, and men's mental health over the last sort of year to 18 months since COVID really has really opened up. So, we're seeing a lot more men being open to it. I think it helps that my dad was an alcoholic, and living with a man that used alcohol as a coping mechanism for stress, and for him not to have lived in an era where it was okay to talk about how he was really feeling. And my dad was a huge empath, and so he took on everybody else's problems, and he wasn't taught how to deal with it. He was a very spiritual man, but back in the day, you were laughed out of the streets for even having those sorts of ideas. So he was really ahead of his time. And he's no longer with us now, but he died about 10 years ago, and that's when I went into meditation and really dived heavily into the sort of psycho aspect of our being. And I think having lived with him and seeing what that effect has on not only men but their partners, and then subsequently their children, really helps me bring my best to my clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was, in the beginning of your book, you talk a little bit about your dad, um, and I think that being born in the wrong time, but and when we're coaching, I think as coaches we connect the dots for people going backwards in time. And for you, like looking at those kind of dots going backwards, when is the first time that your head was turned in this direction of wanting to help people? Was it to do with your dad, or was there other things that happened?
It's funny, I've spoken to a lot of coaches actually, and some of the guys on this call might relate to it, but I think, to be honest, I was born wanting to help people. I was always the kid that when a new person joined the school, I'd come and take them under my wing. I was bullied quite heavily in primary school and into that intermediate, so my kind of susceptibility to see when people were in pain was probably dialed up quite high from my own experience of being bullied. So I think I always knew that I wanted to be in the healing space. I certainly, when I was a kid, I've got a list of 10 wishes that I was looking at the other day, and the empathy really came out. It was like for people to die in their sleep when they're 90, and for there to be no war and famine anymore. It was always leaned towards that humanity. So I think, to be honest, I've always had it. My mum was a teacher. She's an incredible human that's had her own amazing story, lived through the war in Germany with bombs being dropped on her. So just this sort of sense of resilience around my family as well. And unless you understand alcoholism, people often just think it's weak, but actually I see it as a really courageous disease, because you're living with shame every day of your life. You know it's not something you want to be doing, and you know that it's hurting the people you love the most, yet you haven't got the ability or the tools to be able to get yourself out of that. So I think living with two very stoic parents, and living around empathy, and obviously having a natural need to be around people, I was always going to end up in the space of helping people. Yeah.
And like with your dad, what and I appreciate it's really hard to work with people in your family, but were you able to have any of those kind of breakthrough conversations with him kind of towards the end of his life?
Dad and I we had a really amazing relationship actually, and probably quite a unique one. And he helped shape me from the perspective of always asking open-ended questions, always sort of expecting me to look at beyond the black and white of what we can see. Certainly because at the time that he was getting quite poorly, because he lived till he was 80, he was struggling with his breath. So he'd had tuberculosis in his 30s. He had like a V-shaped spine from where he had his surgery of the spine, and so he was very kyphotic. So he was very forward hunching over, and his respiratory system was really compromised. And I can remember just before we moved over here, well, actually my son was probably about 6 or 8 months old, and he got sent to a specialist for breathing. And I can remember my dad coming home and being really upset, and he felt really dismissed that he was in so much pain, and all these people were just sending him to a breathing specialist. And I remember then kind of thinking, but Dad, like breath is life, and if we can't breathe properly, then we can't get the oxygen. From a physiological perspective, we can't get the oxygen we need, which of course is going to create more pain around the body. But I didn't really have the sense of mind really to challenge him on that and actually encourage him to do that. And now if we fast forward 14 years or 13 years, I teach breath work to people, and one of the biggest things in my stress in my workshops and when I'm talking about stress management is bringing it back to the breath. So not that we had those conversations and breakthroughs, but post him dying, he died 10 years ago, I've had multiple times where I've gone, if only I could have spoken to him with the head that I've got on now. He might have, been more settled in his former years of life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess like looking at everything that you've learned over the years, you've come up with this lovely framework that you use with your clients. That the acronym is MENS, MENS. Can you talk us through how that came about, what it stands for, and why it's so important to have this big overview of our life when we're coaching people?
Yeah, sure. So when I was writing, well, actually before I was writing the book, so as I've mentioned, I come from a personal training background. So when I was personal training, people would come to me with their goals, and I don't know, let's say for example they wanted to run a marathon, and the first thing I would do is look at their lifestyle, look at their kind of habits and behaviors that have got them to where they are at the moment, and then what they could do to create the best kind of I'm trying to get my words out today, but to try and get the best routine possible for them to succeed in, let's take for example the marathon. And certainly what I would look at from that perspective was what they were eating, what they were drinking, how much sleep they were getting, and like what their current movement patterns were. And what I noticed as a trainer was on the weeks that the people were getting sleep and they were pretty awesome at getting into that sleep routine, the times that when they'd had restful weekends rather than going out on a bender at work or what have you, that they were performing better physically. And more than that, they were performing better mentally. So the fitter people get, we know that week on, week out, especially when you take running, for example, there is no difference between running 5K on a Monday and then running 5K the following Monday. But if their head wasn't on the game, then they'd think it was harder on the following Monday. So when I started my coaching business, I knew that to get the best out of people with their headspace, then there was no point in starting with that unless I knew how they were sleeping, eating, and exercising.
It's like the four pillars that hold us up.
100%. Yeah, yeah. And I'd go so far. I don't really write too much about it in the book, but that'll be for number 2. The other one is, of course, social interaction. So people who thrive are the ones that feel supported. They're the ones that feel that they've got a partner who isn't going to come home and bring the ice cream if they're on a weight loss journey, or, you know, they've got people around them that are going to be their cheerleaders. But the men's acumen came about when I wrote the book, and it just was one of those ones where I'd finished meditating and I was getting on in my day, and I was like, oh, that's so random. It actually kind of creates men's, and I work with men. How cool is that? So there was no kind of there was no genius. It was just literally a drop in after a meditation, and I was like, I can do something with this, and it's easy, and I work with men. And of course, like, it's sort of evolved from there. So the men stands for mindset, exercise, nutrition, and sleep. And although M is at the front, I'll work with people as to, you know, why are you here, what do you want to get out of it, but we'll generally look at the ends first. And instead of overloading people with things, and you coaches will know that, you know, if you give people too much, they tend to get overwhelmed and a little bit freaked out by stuff. The habit change is hard to do. So what I tend to do is look at their ends, find out which one of those 3 will have the biggest impact, and then we can create a structure so that the M gets kind of more nourished and more growth. So if I give my husband as an example, if he doesn't sleep well, then he won't go to the gym or he won't train. And then when he doesn't train, he'll eat more and definitely drinks more coffee. So for him, if he was my client, I'd be looking at getting the sleep on point. And so that would be the only thing that I'd look at for that period of time, because what we know is that when people feel confident doing one thing, then everything else will just have a positive trickle effect. For myself, if I'm not exercising, then I don't feel confident and I don't feel strong and I don't feel empowered. And then I'm more likely to stop off at the petrol station and smash down a bag of chocolate and a packet of crisps. And then that means I won't sleep very well because I'm loaded with sugar, and then the pattern. So for me, the exercise piece is really important. So that's kind of how I create
It
that.
almost like spins the spiral in the other direction. If you're kind of like spiraling down, you know, and you've said if you've got bad sleep, then it can do this, and you can kind of go down the hole. Whereas if you fix one of them, it can set it going in the other direction.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And this is really cool when you work with people who are coming to you for coaching, you know, traditional coaching. And then if you ask them, okay, so tell me what's going on for you when you sleep, like, and they go, oh yeah, no, I don't sleep too badly. And you go, okay, well, talk to me about what that looks like. And they go, well, you know, I'm on my phone until 9:30, and then I'll go to bed, and then I'll wake up in the night and go for a wee, and then I'll get back to sleep an hour later. And you go, right, this guy's not sleeping very well. You know, he thinks he is, but he's not. Or my nutrition's not so bad. Okay, talk to me about my nutrition. Or have three cups of coffee before midday, or whatever it might be, and they skip their breakfast, and you're going, right, okay, there's some holes here that if we just plug those holes in, they're going to have more energy, which then is going to create that, like you say, that upward spiral. So it's really fun to play around with that, and you don't have to be, you know, super intense with the knowledge of what you just want to kind of gauge that picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, as a hypnotherapist and coach, I notice a lot of people who come to me don't come for sleep necessarily, but by practicing meditations and listening to self-hypnosis recordings, their sleep generally improves. And it just, you know, it's just this beautiful foundation for all the other changes to take place on. So I can absolutely see that it's, you know, one of those 4 foundations is really important.
Yeah, and they're making so much more. I mean, when I was doing PT, sleep wasn't really touched on too much, but in the last sort of 7 or 8 years, it's massive, much like mindset, to be honest. But, you know, Nicholas Gill, who's part of the All Blacks, you know, I went to one of his conferences about 6 years ago, and all he spoke about was sleep and how his athletes and what his athletes needed, and how that had a knock-on effect to their performance. And now it's kind of everywhere, much the same as mindset. You know, this stuff wasn't talked about in professional sports, unless there was something wrong with you. You would see a sports psych if there was something wrong with you, whereas now every like, you know, even triathlon that doesn't have a huge amount of money, they'll have high performance coaches, and it's being bled in, because if you want to be the best at what you do, why wouldn't you work the brain and challenge the brain and get it to function? And yeah, so these sorts of things are being talked about more and more.
I think it's a wonderful thing as well that we've got these elite athletes who are, you know, seeing psychologists and talking about their mindset and how things work, and you know, and using their visualization skills and all of these things, because they're the role models that are, you know, our boys
Yeah,
are looking up to, or you know, in all kinds of sports, that, you know, we've got the kids looking up to these amazing people, and because of what they're doing, they can talk in a you know, a much more rounded way about life. And I think it's just a
yeah,
wonderful thing for kids' mental health as well, which I'm
yeah, definitely. Huge. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
if you were
massive.
going to add another letter to men's, what would it be and what would it stand for?
C for connection. You know, that connection piece is huge, and I think everybody's got their own kind of view on COVID and how that affected us all. But I know for me, I'm a pretty positive person, and just knowing that I couldn't get on a plane to see the people that I loved threw me sideways, and I had to pull every tool that I had in my toolbox to stay centered. So that connection piece is huge, and it's huge from a mental health perspective. I don't know how many of your coaches on the call work in mental health, but just I've seen it, because in mental health, when you're feeling, and I've seen it with my dad and you know, myself as well, when I've had periods where I'm not feeling great, we retract, we go into ourselves. And you know, the messaging with mental health at the moment is it's okay to talk, and you know, please talk and reach out. When you're feeling low and you're feeling completely isolated, you pull back even further. So it's not for us who are struggling to go and ask for help. It's for the people around us to see, hold on a minute, Anna's just saying no to things that she usually says yes to, or I haven't heard from Sarah in a while. Like, I'll just send a message and say, hey, how you going? And I think that's a really important thing for us as coaches to recognize, is that the connection piece is huge, and often the people that are struggling are never going to tell you, even though the message is it's okay to talk. And so I've seen people who have doubted themselves, have had a really amazing idea or a really amazing goal, and they haven't had the support around them, and they've created that reality for themselves in terms of they haven't reached that goal. And then I've seen other people who've got the same goals or similar goals, and they've got beautiful people around them who are like, of course you can, I'm with you, let's do this, let's do it together, like, how are you doing, what do you need? And they're the ones that blossom.
Yeah.
So I think we've got an opportunity as coaches to see that when clients come to us, they might not have that support structure. So it's more vital for us to be that cheerleader and put that cheerleader hat on, and for us to kind of dial into that belief, because if one person believes in you, then you're more likely to take the action, which then gives you the confidence to get the results. And so yeah, C would be my word.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, you've just kind of talked about it, but it's almost like those connections add energy, add momentum, add
Absolutely.
that push forward into whatever you want to do, whether it's, you know, just to come up out of the hole that you're in, or if it's to shoot for something amazing.
Yeah,
Um, that forward motion and that feeling of having a purpose. I guess that would be
yeah,
the other letter that I'd want to add, is like that sense of having a purpose or something to strive for, something to head to.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, in the my last chapter, actually, I had somebody send me a message a couple of weeks ago saying, I'm keeping that last chapter for the times that I feel average, and that purpose piece was exactly what I write about. And in Ayurveda, they call it dharma. What's your dharma? Your purpose. And in in Eastern philosophies and Ayurveda in particular, they look at the whole body. They look at the mental, physical, nutritional side, the spiritual side, the emotional side, and it always comes back to dharma. Like, it always comes back to purpose. And I know that I can if I don't feel connected to something, I don't fire 100%. But if I feel deeply connected to something, I'll give everything I've got. And so again, I think we see this in society now. Like, we've got so many people that are burnt out. If these people were doing jobs that they loved, and they felt deeply connected and a deep purpose to, it wouldn't be burnout, it would be passion. So
Mm.
I can work a 70-hour week and not get burnt out. Why? Because I love what I do. But if I was doing that same 70-hour week as an accountant, I would be burnt out. So you've hit a really, really important message. That purpose piece is huge, and it's sucking the life out of people because they feel that they don't have it.
Yeah, I think we've got such an amazing opportunity these days, really, to disconnect from the traditional way of working.
Yes.
That this is the box, and this is, you go to school, you get your qualification, and then you become a something, and then you carry on being that something until you retire, and then you get your gold watch, and hooray, I did it.
Yeah, definitely.
I think now we've got this lovely ability with the internet, with being able to connect to millions of people, that we can really pick a real niche, something that we're really passionate about, and there will be people who want to hear about it, who want to connect with that idea as well.
Yeah.
um, our kids have that opportunity to really make up a new job in a
Yeah, it's
way.
exciting. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I had the same conversation with my daughter the other day. So my son's kind of one of those, gets the awards, always the high achiever, just does the thing, and he was born with pretty much golden balls. And my daughter is creative and fun and vibrant, but absolutely not set for the school system. And she's 11. And I said to her the other day, I'm so excited for when you can break free of this box that you're in, and you're just, and she's already, she's making magnesium oils for me, and she's selling magnesium oil, and she's going to get an air fryer and with a dehydrator, and make dehydrated fruits, and sell them for Christmas presents, and
I love that
give them away for things.
streak of entrepreneurism.
Yeah,
I remember
and that's her not being
when I
put in the
was a kid.
box.
I remember quite vividly having these little things that I'd sewed up and put little soaps in and sold them at school. And I remember thinking, this could be my job. I could make millions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's so exciting when you take
Exciting
that, when you
being,
take it, open it up.
just in having that autonomy, really,
Yeah,
to make money and to, do something that you're interested in at the time. It's an
yeah,
amazing thing. So yeah, I hope she carries
yeah.
on to
Yeah.
those ideas. It's lovely. And do you have a particular technique or something that you'd like to share with us today while you're on the call that you think would be useful for us to learn or practice or go through?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, like I say, when I'm working with clients, I sort of get an idea as to what's going on for them. I'm working with men, it's quite interesting. A lot of the time, not all of the time, but a lot of the time, it's the females in their lives that have actually encouraged them to come to me. So, not all the time, but those people are, it's different from the perspective of, they haven't actively chosen to come. And then when they do, it's like this sense of relief that, actually it's not just going to be, um, how maybe a traditional counselor or psychologist or what have you would work, and the fact that there is so many opportunities. But I think most of the people that I see, one-on-one and when I do workshops, is the inability to be present. And I guess I learned this when my father died. I started meditating, and prior to that, I always thought it was. I've always been a very busy person, and not from the perspective of like I'm busy. I just really enjoy life, and so I'm always like doing things because I want to make the most of time. But what that meant was I was never really present, because I was always going, oh, this is cool, and then I'm going to go to the next thing, and then I'm going to go to the next thing. It was always, and to a certain degree, I still live a little bit like that now, in terms of always wanting to, there's just always more of life to get. But one thing I learned through meditation was, we can't do the work unless we're present. And so I call it AGM, but that awareness, and once we have an awareness, say, for instance, we get triggered about something, maybe as coaches, we get triggered by one of our clients might say something that triggers us, or we might just feel a bit yucky when we've left a client, or something's happened, or maybe the client's talking about something that's not congruent with your values and you're sort of being triggered from that perspective. The only way we can get beyond that is to become aware. And then we have this, once we're aware, we have this beautiful opportunity to either carry on with our kind of automatic response, so our triggered response and judgment. Generally that will be to judge other people or ourselves. But once we've got that awareness, we then have a second choice, and that is to ground ourselves and do the work or do the reframe. So I call it AGM, which is awareness, grounding. So just be aware of where your feet are at. And then have the reframe. So is this, the question I ask myself is the thought that I'm having, is it helpful? And it's kind of based on Byron Katie's work, but, you know, is it helpful and is it true? And then that gives me a really good opportunity to reframe what I'm about to do, what might be a reactive thought. And in my book, I talk about it with my daughter. She's a real awesome spirit, and but she's definitely leans more towards the anxiety high. She's more highly strung. And so when I'm not completely present, that can go tits up pretty quickly. Like if I'm thinking about, well, I've got to get out of the house and I've got to do this and da, 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 and then I've got a client and da, 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 and she's going off on one of her things, it can very quickly turn into a bit of a mess. So we did have a phase where pretty much me just breathing was painful to her, and so she would get triggered very quickly, and then I'd get triggered, and we just go on this thing. And I've been told that most parents get that, but it wasn't something I was used to, because my son was
so that she's annoyed with me breathing, because I feel like that with my son at the moment. I can just like walk past him and he's like, oh god.
I know, you don't believe it until you're a parent, and then it happens and you go, oh right, okay. Yeah, I'm glad I'm not on my own. So I would have the awareness that I was thinking, oh god, here we go again, and my reactive thing would be, come on Sienna, we've got to get in the car, or whatever it might be. So instead of that, I would ground, be aware of my feet on the floor. I'd take a couple of breaths, and then my mantra was, there's another way. And so just those few words, there's another way, allowed me that distance to then put the washing down or whatever it was that I was doing, and then look her in the eyes, get down to her level and go, hey mate, how can I help? And then she would, then her energy can't be anything less than that, because the energy's changed, and then we get a different outcome. And when we get a different outcome, you're like, yes. And then you get evidence to suggest that actually might happen again, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and all of a sudden your life has changed, or your relationship's changed. And this very much has worked for my clients. So the AGM, they might have a work colleague that irritates the living daylights out of them, or they have got a value. I had somebody the other day that he was getting really frustrated with one of his workers because he's always late, and the boss's value was respect. And I said to him, what does respect mean to you? And he said, being on time. And I said, okay, cool. So we kind of put him in the perspective of this worker that's always late, and we realized that he's got 2 young kids, a wife that also works as well, so there's going to be times when he's taking the kids to school or whatever. And not to say that it was okay that he was always late, but because he'd taken the time to see that there could be a different perspective, he realized that the worker wasn't being disrespectful. He was actually honoring his value of family. So then if he hadn't have done AGM, he would have just continued on his reactive, and the relationship would have got worse. But because of this, he's been able to go, okay, I'm aware that I'm getting triggered of this. I'm going to ground myself. I'm going to see what's really going on. I'm going to ask myself if it's true or it's helpful, and then I'm going to rephrase. So, and when you do that, it just opens up the possibility for you to have different conversations, different energy, which gives you a different outcome.
I love that idea of those 2 questions. Is it true? Because often we say things to ourselves and we believe them in the moment, but they're absolutely, there could be 90 other different possibilities. We've chosen one of those
Absolutely.
possibilities and put all of our money on it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's actually just opening up and, with the grounding, giving ourselves awareness. And I think, one of the quotes in your book that Christine says, and that it's come, I've heard it from lots of people, is first comes awareness, then comes choice.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
lovely space of having the awareness to make that choice is such a gift to be able to give a client.
Yeah. 100%. It's
Yeah.
literally game changing.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I might do now is just open it up to questions. I already saw that Anne had a question, so she's just written it down there. But what I might do is just, I think I can do it so that I can get people to unmute themselves, and then, and then if Anne wants to, oh, there she's come already. Perfect.
Hi.
Hi, Anne.
Hello.
Hi, Anna. Great to share your story and hear all your exciting stuff. It's super. I'm really enjoying connecting.
Likewise.
I was curious because a lot of coaches obviously work with their clients remotely. And
Mhm.
with your doing the massage, I was just curious, do you integrate that into like every session that you do, or is it some phone calls and online stuff and some where the client actually comes in and speaks face to face with you?
Lovely question. Yeah, so I've actually reduced the massage. I don't do any PT anymore, and I've reduced the massage right down. So I live in Tauranga. So I offer two different services. So the first one is coaching, and it's called the Reset Package. And so they get a certain amount of coaching sessions and a copy of my book, and that's the package. And that can be done on Zoom or face to face if they live in Tauranga. And then I've got the holistic package. So that is for people who are local, and they get the coaching sessions, the book, and then they have, I think, 4 half an hour massages and 4 breathwork sessions. So that's kind of a different package for local people. I will be diving more into the breathwork next year and doing more online stuff. And so I'll be able to kind of offer that in my online services as well. But that's pretty much how I work it. For those of you that have got other therapies, when I started coaching 6-7 years ago, I was going to just wipe my hands of all of it and go, no, I'm now a coach and this is what I do. But what I found is really helpful is that people will come to me for coaching, and if they're local, they generally will stay on with me for massage, to be massage clients. And what that does is really creates the opportunity to develop that relationship. So if there's, we're human, so we reach our goals and we do the things, but there are going to be times in our life when we kind of drop down in energy. So if they've got somebody that's kind of there coming, and you've got that regular touch point, you can continue that relationship, which is really quite beautiful. And just to give you an example of how that's evolved, my very first coaching client here in Tauranga, one-on-one, he was is a very significant business owner in town, and he was coming because he was one of these guys that wanted to up level. He knew he's done well, but he wanted to do more. He wanted to do more with his family and make some choices. He then he had his coaching sessions, then kind of came for the odd massage here and there. And now his company, 5 years later, have just signed up for corporate wellbeing sessions for 2024. So it just shows you the relationship that's been built on that trust, I guess, and the outcomes that he's had. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Yeah. I think where I was coming from is that I do coaching with horses. So I
Amazing.
actually bring my clients into the horse arena, and we
Awesome.
do a whole lot of mind, body, and emotional intelligence stuff with the horses, because they are like amplifiers, and so you can clearly see what's happening, and it helps the person because they put their thoughts, feelings, and emotions onto the horse, and then it's easy for them to talk about it.
Fascinating.
And it connects in with the massage that you do, because it relates back to body awareness, and
Absolutely.
whatever one's holding in the body, the horses can help to see that. But if you're doing massage, a person can also experience stuff and go, oh, it's there, it's sitting there.
Absolutely. And
And
I've
out
had that.
comes all
Yeah.
the stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's no 100%. People feel lighter when they've had that touch. And interesting you should say about the horses. I had a session with a horse coach probably 3 years ago now, 2 or 3 years ago, and it was really funny. Every time I tried to like lead the horse, she wouldn't go, but every time I just stood shoulder to shoulder, the horse would move. And it was just really interesting. Like they said that it was just because I obviously don't feel comfortable kind of, I like being shoulder to shoulder with people, kind of going on the journey with them. And it was fascinating stuff and quite an emotional release actually. So brilliant work that you're doing.
Brilliant. Thanks, Anne, for that question. That was lovely. I'd love to know more about the horse therapy as well. And might have you on to talk about it one day.
Sarah, I'd love that. I'd absolutely love it. But I was just thinking, how do I do it and bring the horses into the conversation? So we'll think of something.
Lovely. Does anybody else have a question that they'd like to ask? Go for it, Hania.
So I predominantly work with women, however, I don't close my doors to men. And I notice with men that when I start going, so how does it make you feel? Or I start bringing emotions in, it's less easy than with women, right? So do you have any tips working with men in particular?
I love this question. Yeah, this is a juicy one. Yeah, like brilliant answer. Question. So I guess with men is that one, most of them don't know what feelings are. So they will, and they're very visceral. So they will, a feeling will generally come in their body. So what I would be looking at is what's going on for them. One of the questions I ask is, if I was a bird, kind of just looking in at your window, what would I see? And they'll be like, oh, well, I'm a bit grumpy. Most of them say I'm grumpy. Most of them say like, or I'll go, if I was watching you driving, what would that look like? And, you know, a lot of them will be like, oh, fucking just get out of the fucking way, excuse my language. But, you know, like there's this kind of anger behind it. And so if you ask those two questions, you're not kind of going into how are you feeling. You're asking them, what would I notice if I was sitting next to you in the car, or if I was a little bird watching you? And then they kind of get an opportunity to reflect, and you'll notice that they'll go, well, I'm pretty angry, or I'm a bit distracted, or I probably shout at the kids when I don't need to. I'm on my phone too much. I don't listen. So actually what you're seeing there is probably a bit of misplaced anger, unresolved stress that they're not sort of being able to articulate, or they feel that they can't, you know, well, I've got a mortgage to pay, so I can't leave my job, you know, all of that sort of stuff. That's very real at the moment. Often with men, they're misunderstood, and I've seen this countless times in personal training as well, actually, when I used to massage, when I used to train the woman in the morning and the man at night. And I talk about it in the book with one particular guy, and she would be like, he's just never around for the kids, and he's always running late, and then he never wants to go out with me, and I've just, you know, he's just not there. And then on the other side of the coin, I'd get the husband bursting into the studio at like 6:45 at night, having done a 15-hour day, going, far out, like, she's spending so much money, I'm working my ass off, like she wants to go on holiday, and I just can't deal with it. I'm giving her everything. And you've got these two people who love each other to pieces, but their languages are so different. And so for men still, I know there's a big shift, but the men still feel a very unconscious need to provide. And when they feel that their women are not seeing that, they feel really like, what's the point? And so so for you to kind of uncover them for them is really helpful. And then the other thing I'd be looking at is what are you noticing in their body language? So a lot of them will be holding their breath, they might be clenching their teeth, they might avoid eye contact with you, And one thing that I do get them to do is set a timer, and I get, if I'm working with women as well, get them to do it as well, but set a timer for every 2 hours and do a body scan. So when the timer goes off, just check, right, what's going on from my head all the way down to my feet. And for the first few days, they'll be like, nothing's happening. It's such a waste of time. I can't feel anything. And by day 4 and 5, they're going, oh man, I'm really noticing that I'm like really clenching my jaws and my jaw. And do you know what? When Nicola sends me a text message, immediately I hold my breath. Like, and so they're starting to see, okay, the triggers are going on. And then a little bit down the line, once you've established a bit of a relationship, you can kind of talk about the umbrella. You know, anger's just kind of like the outcome, but there's disappointment and fear and blah, blah, blah. You can kind of go down that. Men can be quite visual. So if you've got like the feelings, descriptions, you know, like I quite like it. There's, what's her name? Susan Davis, the emotional agility lady. She's got Susan David, her name is, like the umbrella, and she'll have anger, and then she'll have all of the different kind of subsequent feelings underneath. So you can kind of go, which one of these might be?
As well, isn't there, with the like bigger emotions on the, like, you know, the more basic.
Oh, the circle, yes.
So you've got sadness, and then it divides out into melancholy, you know, so that they've got those descriptive words to actually articulate how they're feeling.
100%.
And seeing the words down there, it's like, oh yeah, that's the one. That's what I've got.
Yeah, definitely. They're very visual, and it's really helpful if you do have that or a version of. Yeah. Does that help?
Yeah, definitely. So what I'm hearing is it starts with the behavior. So once they can see the behavior, then you can go through the steps to identifying those emotions. Yeah. Cool.
Definitely.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
No worries. Good luck with it.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Does anybody else have a quick question before we leave you for the rest of your Friday? Oh, it feels like it should be a Wednesday, but it's Friday. Lovely. Oh, thank you so much, Anna. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today and finding out a bit more about your story and your book. And if you want to find out more about the book, it's called Only Human, Anna Veal.
I'll pop it in the notes, and then you can have a little look.
Because it's just a nice walkthrough as well. It's not just a book. It's kind of like a workbook as well. You work your way through it, and it's got lots of nice little exercises and ideas for working with your clients, which I think would, you know, is a good addition to any toolkit. More as for adding to your toolkit.
Yeah, and if anyone's got any questions post this, then just send me an email and I'll happily answer any questions. But it's been really great coming on. Thank you, and thanks for the awesome questions at the end.
Thank you so much. And if you want to re-watch any of these little interviews, they're on our YouTube channel. You can look that up, or I think it's, if you just look up New Zealand Life Coaching, it should pop up. But yeah, I've had a wonderful morning. Thank you so much, Anna. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and a wonderful weekend. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you. See ya. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed that video. If you'd like to find out more about professional life coaching training so that you can discover your true path and learn transformational tools and techniques, then click on the link below or go to nzlifecoaching.com/transformation.